get this ball rolling here. We're gonna call the meeting to order today, November 16th, 2023, 11:30 a.m. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, guys, let's see. All right, we're on item 1.02, adoption of the agenda. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to review the previous agenda. And then I'll ask for a motion here shortly. That's just extra copies. Oh, that's this month's agenda they're asking for right there, isn't it? I'm sorry, I skipped over something very important. Actually, roll call. Let's get the roll call rolling before we get the approval of the agenda. Gina Blackman-Taylor.
Here.
Abraham Camejo.
Here.
David Flatt.
Present.
Michael Flores. Absent. Okay, Byron Goins. Do we have Byron Goins on virtually? No. Robert Gertison.
Present.
Chad Conrad. Was Chad supposed to be on virtually? No. Don't see him. Okay. Nicole Lehman Donadio. Al Lopez, present. Todd Peterson.
Present.
Yvette Williams.
Here.
Miss Katie Williams, Board of Trustees Liaison. She present? No. Valerie, do we have enough here to meet a quorum? Thank you very much. All right. Now, since we have been reviewing the minutes, do I have a motion to approve as presented?
Rob Gertison to propose the adopting the amendments.
Dave Lamb for the second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Pass. Okay. Moving on to 2.02, reports by chair liaisons and representatives.
Hold on.
Go ahead. So,
Did you adopt the agenda?
isn't that what we did first?
You did the minutes.
The minutes. Oh, maybe I should have said agenda. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It should have been the adoption of the agenda, not the minutes. So I'm gonna have to ask for a new motion to adopt the agenda for today's meeting.
This is Gina Blackman-Taylor for the record. I motion that we adopt the agenda.
We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Okay, now we can move on to the reports of the liaisons. We will go to Mr. Chad Conrad, which I don't think he's present. So we will move on to Abraham Camejo, Construction.
Hello, everybody. Last week I was able to meet with Brandon. He's going to be doing a part of his presentation regarding the contractor workload and how we're doing business with everybody. I just want to also mention that I was able to go to a meeting, a networking meeting with Martin Harris yesterday, and a bunch of contractors were meeting regarding the bid for the Cheyenne project. And so we were talking about the requirements and things to be able to get into the vendor system. And the biggest question I kept on coming up in mind was the paperwork regarding the financials to be able to move forward for all these contractors. And so I got a few business cards from those interested, so I'll be sharing these with you. But these are companies that are qualified. They meet the Nevada Contractors Board of licensing requirements and everything. They just need that little push to be able to start doing more business with us. And so, as me and Brandon had our meeting last week, this is something that we're going to be working together to try to do more networking events with purchasing and everything, and try to diversify our list, the vendors list, more, so that way we can have more options and more contractors bidding for these work. Because if we don't increase that list, I strongly feel that we're not getting proper bids. That's how I feel personally. So if we can get more qualified contractors on board, Brandon and his team will have more options to give out this work, and we can provide more work for everybody here in the valley. So that's the goal, is just to try to move forward on that. So I look forward for your presentation that you'll be giving in a few minutes. But that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Camejo? Hearing none, moving on to Robert Gertison, Design.
Hello, everybody. See, I've been in Peru the last few weeks, so I haven't really been able to do much here, but Brandon just updated me that Von Tobel did get awarded through a CMAR process, and there's quite a bit of work that the staff is working on that I'll be soon involved with to learn more about and report back to you next month. Also haven't forgotten about my presentation that I'm going to be making about the things that I'm working with staff on about just understanding CMAR delivery method better. So I look forward to working with staff and then making that report early next year sometime. Thank you.
Great. So now, do we have any questions for Mr. Gertison? Hearing none, moving on to Mr. David Flatt, Site Selection, Land Use.
We have no new reports this session.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Flatt. Moving forward, Gina Blackman-Taylor and Mr. Michael Flores with Community Relations. Anything to report on, Gina?
Just some updates on moving forward. We've been, we had a chance to chat about some of the policy reviews and the best process for taking that forward. You'll see further conversation as we get into that bylaw conversation a little bit later, so I'll save some of that. Michael and I touched base also about the need to, or a desire to touch base with the government affairs person for CCSD as we're talking about getting some of our feet under us when it comes to requests that are going to need to be made of the legislature in the next session that relates directly to bond and how the money situation has had an impact on planned construction, and basically how to get ahead of some of that not get ahead of it, but be a part of that conversation in order to get the best outcomes on that legislative side. And I think that is it for now. Unless, well, Michael's not on, right? If he doesn't have anything.
Michael's-
But we're touching base.
Okay, great. Any questions for Ms. Gina Blackman-Taylor? Hearing none. Moving on to 2.03, report by the Clark County Board of Trustee Liaison. Is the liaison present? I don't hear anything, so since she's not, we'll see if she pops up later and we'll come back to it. Moving on to 2.04, 2015 Capital Improvement Program Summary Status. Mr. Rodney Fouts.
Rodney Fouts for the record. Currently, our bond proceeds to date are $3.1 billion. Our expenditures are just under $2.5 billion. We have another $466 million encumbered. for total expense and encumbrances of $2.95 billion. Currently, our available cash flow balance is just under $618 million. However, what I consider our available balance is at 151.8 due to the encumbrances. So the one thing, if you look at this report regularly, you'll see that available balance has dropped considerably since the last report, primarily because we are now under contract with several of our projects, which we've all been waiting for with bated breath. If we can move on now to 2.04B.
Excuse me, Mr. Faust, I just wanted to put on the record that Mr. Chad Conrad has joined us virtually. Thank you. Go ahead, Randy.
2.4B, again, we're at 7.7 billion anticipated bond proceeds. Our budgeted projects to date are just under 7.3 billion, leaving us available proceeds of just under $500 million. The items that have changed since the last May when we presented the overall project list. Original budget changes, that was a change of $15 million. That's because we added the basic high school cafe addition to the report. The original budget for that project was $15 million. As far as current budget changes, we've had $179.1 million changes from our May report. I will only go over about a few handful of those because there's roughly about 38 to 40 projects that have added or decreased in budget. One of the major items is in Broadbent Boulevard and East Russell Road. We had an elementary school that we had planned to do there. We have yet to get that land, so we've decided to remove that from the project list, and that accounted for $44.9 million. Bracken Elementary School, which is at 60% OPC, our budget increased there $24.8 million. Helen Smith Elementary School replacement at 30% OPC, increase of just over $29 million. Brown Middle School, which is at 30% OPC, an increase of $22.7 million. Cimarron Memorial High School Comp Mod, we just got the bid on that, so that increased $34.8 million. And Green Valley High School Comp Mod, which is at 95% OPC, increase of $14.2 million. And that's as of the month of September, which is the numbers that we're reporting on currently. Again, that was a total of $179.1 million in increases in these projects.
Do we have any questions from the board for Mr. Fouts? Go ahead, Jen.
No,
Thank you.
this is Chad Conrad.
Checking the first.
No questions on this. I just, because I missed the earlier portion of the meeting, I apologize for my late arrival. I received a pay application from Mr. Fouts this morning for Bass Elementary School. I haven't had a chance to review it yet, so no questions at this point on anything for me, but I'll have something to report based on my review of the new materials for the next meeting.
Thank you, Chad. Go ahead, Jen.
Hi, thanks again. Yeah, can you say that intersection again for me, the one that that you've had to cancel?
It's Broadbent Boulevard and East Russell Road over there by what I believe it was called the Silver Dome, or in the past.
And this was a planned elementary school?
There was a planned elementary school at one point in time. One of the problems is obtaining the property there. We've never been successful in that effort, so we moved on from that potential site.
And obviously, if there was a planned elementary school, there was a planned need for that. So what are the ways in which we're kind of handling that need in that area?
One of the items that we are doing currently is evaluating in our our potential elementary schools that we had, whether that be our fourth elementary school location. I don't know what that location is. I don't know if Brendan has any updates on that.
So Brandon McLaughlin, as far as the need for the project, comprehensive planning, Rick Baldwin's team does oversee whether there was still a need for that. This elementary school in particular dates back to, I believe, revision 3. The need's been there, and some of the demographic trends that have been occurring, the need might not be there anymore. But without certainty of Rick's team verifying that, we can follow up with that. But the need has elapsed of what was needed back then in 2018, 2019 to what's transpired now.
So to that end, I mean, given that we are going to have to be choosier with some of these projects and the timeline, how often is that kind of, that are these projects reevaluated then for continuing need? Because basically kind of what I'm hearing is that there may not be no longer a need for it, right?
Yeah.
Because it was part of revision 3.
Right.
So just making sure that we're not on autopilot, right? Like, and making sure that projects that are going forward aren't finishing just as we find that perhaps they're not as much needed.
Right.
Is that really in the evaluations of the revisions where we're seeing that? Or, because some of these things we've planned for years out, correct?
Right. So Rick's team, as it contributes to a capital improvement plan revision, yeah, we do look at what's the long-range forecasted need. This just happened to be one that during demographic trends that have been observed of late, there was significant drops across the district and has been heavily reported on. So just the need from there may have been reduced. So I just, without certainty with Rick's confirmation, the need for an elementary school in that specific area may no longer be needed, and that was up to the budgetary of if we were to eliminate a project we can't procure land for, we can transfer those budgetary resources elsewhere. That make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And then my second question, obviously, we're seeing these really large jumps, but as a percentage of the kind of original forecast budget, some of these elementary schools are almost doubling in cost versus a junior high school that's maybe adding 20 million on an $80 million project. Can you help me understand why the percentages of jumps have been much larger for some of these elementary schools versus these other bigger projects?
Yeah, so the budgets that were set in CIP Revision 5 were using pre-pandemic or entering pandemic historical cost data of ours. Many of those trends have not been the case the last 2 years. So yeah, we are experiencing anywhere from a 40 to 60% swing of budgets set, say, pre-pandemic or at the beginning of pandemic. And granted, CIP 5 was entered into in late 2021 or 2021 legislative session. Many of those historical trends didn't hold. So those budgets were set with good intentions, but not necessarily reflective of what costs are experiencing nowadays, given the market saturation of our local industry market, as well as just inflation across all consumer sectors and industry and raw data pricing across the globe.
Yeah, and I definitely understand that 40 to 60% kind of raise, but when you have, for instance, Helen Smith, you've got a $30 million increase on a $35 million, that is well outside of a 60% increase.
Yeah, so I mean, take Red Rock as a good example of that. That was the first of the elementary school prototype that's being constructed right now. That the initial guaranteed maximum price was $44 million. The initial budget was $35 million. So a minor swing up, but that's a 24 delivery. Helen Smith, it happens to be a 2025 or even 2026 delivery. 2020, I believe it's 2025. So you add another year of escalation, and escalation we're seeing anywhere from 7 to 10% year over year. We won't know that full amount until we get a bid, but at least for estimating purposes, we are experiencing anywhere from 7 to 10% higher just from the year prior. Brown is a similar boat. You've got 3 in construction of that prototype, but you matriculate it out 2 years of escalation. You take an $80 million project, you escalate it 2 years, and that's generally the trend we're seeing.
So the ones that are planned for farther out, we'll see a greater percentage increase?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, it's still hard to understand why one is really kind of roughly, I haven't done the math, but 85 to 90% over those initial projects. I mean, that's really going to have an impact on what we're going to be able to do going forward. Thank
Rodney
you.
Phelps, for the record, to add on to that, we have to remember the process that we use to increase our budget. We go by our original budget that we put into our report of what we estimated the project would cost. When we get our OPCs, that is the first time that we get an estimation of what the project's going to be. Predicated on those OPCs, I then raise our budget. So if the 30% OPC comes in and it's a $20 million increase, I obviously factor that in. If the 60% OP comes in and it's another $5 million increase, I'm going to factor that into our budget. The 95% OPC comes in and that's another $5 million higher, I factor that into our budget. And I also put on a margin on our side to protect us, because in most cases, particularly in today's environment, those costs are probably not going to necessarily come in at those levels, because we have off-site developments and those types of things that are outside the contractor's budget, unless there's some kind of allowance for it. So again, I am constantly updating these. So for example, when I stated Helen Smith at 30%, that's the first OPC that I've received. I typically, in most cases, probably wouldn't put that 30% OPC in our report, but because the numbers are so drastic, I feel it's important to show that. So it wouldn't be surprising to me that when I get the 60 OPC, I may be coming back on Helen Smith and telling you that price has now gone up another $2, $3, $4 million based upon what the architect has determined. Yes.
Actually, then I do have a follow-up with that. Then before a school gets put on this list, you're already now making those adjustments based on what we're seeing, these numbers. So any new school that ends up on this list is already, a new elementary school is going to come in. Are you going to still have that 35 million as that estimated cost, or are we going to see that number jump more to 60 million for a new elementary school based on this historical data?
Well, we have 2 budget columns. One is the original budget, so the 35 million will show up in the original budget column.
Because that's what was set
Right.
as a budget number for CIP revision 5.
And then what you will see on a new school, as soon as I get a new OPC, there will be a change in the change column as to what I'm increasing that budget by or decreasing that budget by, and that will reflect what the adjusted budget is.
So once we have a CIP revision 6, at that point, then we might see new schools that come onto this list at a more accurate prediction, because that revision 6 will be done with those new numbers and these new trends in mind.
I would say for ones that we are adding, I don't know that we would go back to the projects that are underway that are going to be both on revision 5 and revision 6.
I see what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Gina?
No, I think I'm.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Williams.
I just wanted to just clarify again that, because that was going to be my question, was you are already putting in your anticipated increase when we're seeing this. So, correct? What you're
The
anticipating.
anticipated increase is in the budget change column.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you're already taking into consideration. You said about 7%, 7 to 10% increase, and so you're already adding that into this. We don't have to try to do the math ourselves.
Revision 6 will have prices coming in at what we're projecting at that
Yeah.
particular point in time and year, as well as increases that we built on the
Yeah.
years following.
I just wanted to
when they
make
fall in line.
sure that I heard that correctly. Thank
But
you.
those won't be reflected until we get to revision 6, when we reflect those numbers.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Fouts or Mr. McLaughlin? Go ahead, Mr. Flatt.
When do we expect revision 6?
Brandon McLaughlin, we are currently We've presented it to some leadership with the district, and we are going to solicit feedback. We've been identifying what the process will be with our leadership, and we're at a point probably in the next several weeks where we'll start involving BOC members to be informing that, and then we'll start to solicit what the public input process for that would look like. So I think we're targeting within the next 2 to 3 months to have it as an agenda item with you guys, and then on to the Board of School Trustees. Yep.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
I just wanted to just bring up again, and I know, Gina, you had kind of mentioned that you were going to talk about this a little later, so I don't want to jump ahead of that. But I just want to make sure that we have our discussion around some of the policy revisions that we've been in discussions before we get to another revision. And we haven't accounted for that because that then goes to some of the concerns we have on how we're determining what schools get what.
Okay, Mr. Camille, go ahead.
Just a question, how, the data that we're getting from the GMPs, how old is it?
I guess I want to clarify what the ask is. So the guaranteed maximum price is the estimate that a CMAR contractor in particular will give to us, and that's real-time bid data. The estimates that probably you're referring to, Mr. Fouts, are a third-party estimating team that does quantity takeoffs and historical cost data of certain building components to then inform the design team, because we oftentimes rely upon these third parties to be informing the design team throughout design, and also as a reconciliation tool against our CMAR delivery methods, where at each of those design milestones, CMARs and the third-party estimating is then reconciled to say, is this GMP in line with what market trends are actually being observed? So you can prevent, or it validates some of the GMP, the midpoint pricing for some of our GMP contracts.
Yeah, the reason why I ask is because I've been poking bear. I've been asking around contractors, the owners, and they're telling me that the third party that the school district is using, their data is old. So we're not, I don't know how old, I don't know the time frame, but I think that might be something that we need to look into. I'm not sure who's our third party vendor for this is, but maybe try to get some updated data, especially if it's before COVID dates, try to, so we can, because at the end of the day, we as a board, we have to justify the spending, this constant increase of taxpayers' money, from the bond, and because at the end of the day, that's what the general public is looking at. They're like, oh, why is the school costing so much money? Why? And they don't really understand that. But if if we can get more of these, the price, and I understand the global market, the shipping and material, but we're going on 4 years after the pandemic. So I mean, it's got to start to stabilize sooner or later. It's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's a few responses within that. I'll try to leave some of it that's outside of my expertise, but the third-party cost estimators are oftentimes, actually most of the times, they're hired directly by the architect or the design professional as a part of their professional design services agreement with us. So we do not directly contract with them. There are a limited number of those third-party estimators within our marketplace, our local marketplace. But they do, not to go too laboriously into their process, but they do call on major subcontractor trades. They do solicit estimating teams at large and small general contractors often. So if I'm an owner of a general contracting company, I would say the guy trying to tell me I'm too high is low too. But that's the point of the reconciliation, is say, okay, if you say I'm low, where am I low and why? And do you have a justifiable estimate from that subcontracting trade to demonstrate that you're right and I'm wrong? But those are actually very collaborative reconciliations between our cost estimators and our general contractors, where there usually is some alignment between, yeah, you actually are seeing things pretty aligned. But I think the budgeting process is a process that Mr. Fouts and I's departments have better reconciled of how we present budgets into the future. But obviously we got blindsided by some major hikes that we saw coming out of the pandemic from CIP 5.
And then, do you guys use the program, the e-builder?
Yeah, that is our internal project management tool.
Is there a way we can have a small like presentation on how that program's working? And that way we understand what you guys are using?
I can certainly defer it to Mr. Lopez, and this might be a better recommendation to come from future agenda items.
Yeah, let's do that. When we get to a future agenda, item,
Okay.
just bring that item up.
Perfect.
and
Thank you
we'll
so much.
Definitely put it on the record if the board desires to do so. So are there any other questions for Mr. Fouts or Mr. McLaughlin, I'm sorry. Hearing none. Let's move on to item 2.05, contractor workload. This will be another discussion for Mr. Brandon McLaughlin. The floor is yours, Brandon.
Thank you, Brandon McLaughlin. As you can, if we can pull up reference 2.05 on the screen. Good. So Brandon McLaughlin, for the record, as an announcement was shared maybe indirectly before the meeting, as we've shared, I think late summer, the Facility Services Unit has gone through a bit of a restructuring effort as of late, and so I have had the opportunity to now be appointed as the Assistant Superintendent of Construction. Excited to continue to work with you all as we develop this Revision 6, the CIP, and continue to facilitate any needs you guys have as a committee of the Board of Trustees. So just wanted to inform you guys of that, and then we'll get into the presentation here. So next page, please. So this slide deck was put together at the request of the committee to solicit who is doing work with the district, as well as what's the makeup, what's the duration of there. There's a couple asks within it, and so I thought it would be useful to go through how we pre-qualify and procure construction phase services, and then what's that makeup, similar to the AE deck that I've presented back in August with you guys, that you guys see every other year for the pre-qualification of that professional service as well. So first and foremost, we are held to Chapter 338 of the Nevada Revised Statutes that outlines the 3 project delivery and procurement methods that are available to us. So design, bid, build is obviously the most recognizable to general public and the committee probably, but this one stipulates that we choose the lowest responsive and responsible bid. So oftentimes we solicit a set of documents, completed documents, out to general contractors that are pre-qualified with the district. They provide us a bid. We have limited ability to verify what's in that bid, but there are stipulations we can put on it that they are to list 1%, 5% major trades, and we can follow up of did they incorporate certain elements that may or may not have been clearly identified. So there's limited response, but it is a way to achieve a low cost and most efficient procurement method for us. 2 others that are available to us, one predominantly that we use more than the other is construction management at risk. We're doing a lot more of that. This is a very collaborative and transparent delivery method that's available to us that was recently, I say recent, but probably almost 2 decades now, as an available delivery method to us. This one, contractors come on board during design phase and they offer pre-construction services. That is an ability for them to provide constructability, and they're doing logistics, phasing, scheduling, real time with the designer. So ultimately, you go out and you have subcontractors bidding that work, and the general contractor is then preparing a guaranteed maximum price. Within that, then, like I said, it's a very transparent process. So there's 3 different options of how you can price construction manager at risk work, but the one that we utilize is a cost plus model in this. So it's the cost of the work plus a agreed to overhead and profit fee on top of that. And it really makes it a very open and transparent and a great delivery method when properly executed. A lot more collaborative, it minimizes our risks. We're able to alleviate some of those unknowns or things that can't be quantified during design phase. Last but not least, design build. This is where general contractors perform the function of the design as well. Oftentimes they will hire a designer, or they offer in-service or in-house design services through their own means and methods, but rarely utilized, and there is some specific parameters around this specific delivery method that it has to be specific and a unique type of project type. So little utilized, but Chapter 338 is predominantly the section that we look to the most as far as procurement of construction services. Additionally, we have Policy 7210 and Regulation 7210. Those stipulate a few nuance items, so I recommend you go look at them. I can provide them to you as well in a follow-up. But predominantly it just says we're going to comply with all Nevada revised statutes, so it just puts us in compliance with NRS, and then Regulation 7210 stipulates that we will advertise, bid, and award contracts as a local government. And it also stipulates our pre-qualification parameters that we'll follow, particular point 1377 of NRS 338, as far as how we as a local entity will pre-qualify and determine that contractors are or are not pre-qualified to do work with the district. Next slide, please.
Pardon me?
Byron just joined.
Oh, great. Oh, I'm sorry. Byron Goins has joined us virtually. Appreciate you attending, Byron. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this next slide here, a little bit more clarity around what our pre-qualification grants you. So say a firm applies for and is granted pre-qualification to bid CCSD work, they are then pre-qualified for typically 2 years as a prime general contractor. And again, NRS 338.1377 stipulates what those conditions that we evaluate against are. And so then overall, you look at the total collection of pre-qualified construction companies, prime general contractors. We have 56 that we currently have pre-qualified on our list, and that's for license types A, B, B, and then some of the B and C specialties. And so predominantly what this slide deck will focus on is A, within the last 2 years worth of work. And I went back to January 1 of, say, 2021. Also, we kept it to tier 1 subcontractor level that was available to us, because we do have, I think, over 700 different companies pre-qualified at the district, but many of them are very small, almost sole proprietor electricians or roofers or landscapers. So I know the focus of this was to be more capital improvement based. And so of those license types, I isolated them to 56 construction companies that are pre-qualified with us. Within the last 2 years, almost 2.5 years really, when you go 2023 year to date, we've had 18 construction companies that have been awarded the work as we've bid it and solicited qualification-based selections. So next slide, please. And you see the makeup of our general contractors that have been awarded work on the right-hand column, the amounts awarded to them. And this pie chart you see here is the percentage of contract amounts awarded. So you see we have a few larger construction companies that have 194, 125, 108 million. And really that speaks to the volume of work they're pre-qualified to do. That we can't give a $150 million high school to a firm that's only pre-qualified for 20 million, clearly. So of our large enterprise level general contractors, they are the ones capable of holding larger projects and more of those projects, which is making these numbers appear like a larger portion of the work is going to only a select few construction companies. So I thought another way to slice this up to present good data to you guys would be, to the next slide, please, is by the quantity of work. So you see Ryan Mechanical, for example, has 7 awarded contracts, and those are all smaller contracts because that is a smaller specialty subcontractor, but acting in a prime capacity, though licensed as a general contractor. But many more smaller projects, whereas you see the Coors, Martin Harris's, much larger projects and fewer of them. So I think this starts to show a more, obviously a more distributed basis of it. And I will preface that, if most of the stuff we do is hard bid or design, bid, build, project delivery methods. So we more often than not do take the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. So all that to say, limited control of how we truly give projects. We don't give projects. They have to be awarded based upon oftentimes their lowest cost. So this is just reflective that through a means of bid work and pre-qualification based CMAR type work, we are distributing the work across many companies that do business with us. Next slide, please. And last, in talking with Abraham in the development of this slide deck, I did want to highlight some of the outreach opportunities. So clearly there is a benefit to more pre-qualified general contractors doing work with us. It gives more incentive for folks to provide a competitive pricing to us if there's more bidders on any solicited project, as well as it gets us more visible with the contracting community to be a good partner in providing tax dollar benefits to the contracting community. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of the areas we've been targeting to get our work opportunities out there, and then additional things that Abraham and I are developing about how we continue to further expand knowledge of how to do work with CCSD. So first and foremost, our contracts procurement and compliance website is very diligent about very easy to read buttons about do work with CCSD, and our director or supervisor of CPC is the department that this lands with. She's willing to sit with any subcontractor to your level to fill out the paperwork right. That's the least of what we want to be the holdup for people. So people that have expressed interest with doing work with the district, she's more than happy to sit with them. And as long as they get in contact with her, she'll walk them through the process. It goes through a routing process, and we're more than happy to have more people involved in our work. So then it's about how to get people to those mediums of soliciting all their paperwork and getting everything documented for us. So there are multiple industry presentations that myself, former interim chief facilities directors, have presented at. So I just wanted to highlight a few. Most recently, we presented at the UNLV Economic Development. They have a contractor coursework where it gets smaller tier subcontractors more informed of what are all the available opportunities for public works to be bidding those types of projects. So we presented a deck of here's how to do work with it, here's the types of work we have, here's how to get pre-qualified with us, here's what you can expect once you're in the field with us. So just the nuts and bolts. Similarly, there's a SMPS, the Society of Marketing Professional Services. These guys represent our architects, contractors, and engineers that do a lot of work with us. So again, we share with them, here's the workload coming up, here's how to do business with us, and we push them to those websites and other electronic tools that are available to them to do work with us. Some additional associations that we do want to solicit more input with is the American Builders American ABC and AGC. Those are predominantly our contractors, and so we have been in communication, and Abraham will be a great advocate with us to be making more presentations to some of those contractor-led associations. And then also the one that Abraham mentioned that Martin Harris had, we do have project-specific pre-qualification blitzes. And these usually benefit the general contractors that are pre-qualifying for their specific awarded contracts, but more often than not, we've been seeing our general contractors are being great partners, and that they're pushing the same subcontractors are being pre-qualified for their project. They are pushing to our resources, so they're getting pre-qualified with both at the same time. So we've been having a lot of success with that with two of our larger general contractors recently. Next slide, please. With that, is there any questions?
Are there any questions for Mr. McLaughlin from the board? Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to point out, thank you so much for this great work. It's great information that you're providing. So I just wanted to say thank you for the time that you did spend down to break this down for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quinto. Yvette Williams?
Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple questions. One, are you capturing any data as it relates to subcontractors of on these job sites? And I'm particularly interested in it from a diversity and inclusion standpoint. You know where I'm going with it. Gosh, you guys can read me. So I'm particularly interested in, I see, a lot of work here, almost $1 billion, and 42 companies. But oftentimes, in using subcontractors is where we get a lot of our diversity. And so, in fairness, maybe if we're able to ask for that information, of course, it's not required, but if we ask, there's certain things we can ask, and ask them for a list of subcontractors on jobs. is that something they automatically have to share with you who their subcontractors are? Or so that you can capture that data? Or is this something we'll need to ask them about?
Mixture of both, probably. So yes, we track the major subcontractors. Like I said, we, as a standard procedure, require them to list their 5% and 1%. That's 5% of the contract value. So it's
Okay.
mainly your electricians, your HVAC guys, the bigger trades. And then as a part of the Labor Commission certified payroll process, they do have to, or they have the option of informing the entity, us, of their diverse status. But we can follow up with maybe what data we do have on that of the ones that have elected to inform us of those
I would be
choices.
very interested in that. And then taking it one step further, as it relates to workforce,
Yep.
diversity and inclusion. And so I know that they are all, including their subcontractors, are required, because of this public work contract, that they provide a report at the conclusion of their contract of their workforce diversity. And so are we asking for that also as a proactive approach to us wanting to, one of our values, or is that something we haven't quite implemented in facilities as a procedure?
There's no known or no established procedure yet regarding that, but I mean, you as much as anybody are familiar with what we were doing on Northeast CTA.
Yeah.
So not to preempt future agenda items too much, but we are developing a future agenda item to share out what we were able to achieve on Northeast, and then also what we're going to set as a goal on South CTA, which is a sister project to that.
Okay, so we'll have further discussion
Yep.
around this? Okay.
Exactly, yep.
Thank you, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the being proactive towards that, Thank you, appreciate it.
Are you done, Ms. Williams?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Peterson. You have a question?
Good afternoon. Honestly, this question may not be appropriate, so if it is, I apologize. These projects, these companies are all able to do large, massive construction projects for the district. These aren't in reference to like site-funded projects that principals would be asking to have done at their schools, or is it inclusive of both $1 million or $1 billion construction jobs as well as fixing this wall at a school or something like that?
It's neither and both.
Okay.
So each construction company you see on the right-hand side of slide 4, and it's the same as slide 5, but all the construction companies you see listed are pre-qualified to a limit that they have the facility services unit has set as a pre-qualification limit based upon what they've been able to document with us, that if they have a history of doing $30 million projects, we pre-qualify them for $30 million projects. But we can't pre-qualify someone capable of doing $5 million for $1 billion project. That would be negligent on our part. So all of these construction companies have a varied limit. They sometimes perform site-funded projects, though they're not required to, but a handful of them do, just off the first glance. But also, if they're a, say, $100 million capable company, they're probably not going to want to go after relocate an outlet on a site-funded work. So oftentimes, that's where we go tier 2 subcontractors and electrician, small works electrician predominantly. So.
Rodney Fouts, for the record, too, the data wasn't pulled to pull site-funded projects. It was pulled to pull bond-funded projects.
Understood. Okay, that makes sense. And then my second question would be, is there any information at all from these contractors regarding their experience working with our district in terms of when they finish a project, what their experience was? I mean, I don't own a business, but I would imagine that as a business person, I would maybe not want to do, if I go to paint someone's house and that person is changing their color decisions every, then they call me back 6 months later and said, hey, I want to paint the inside of my house. I'm going to be like, you know what, I'm too busy. So my question would be like, what is the experience that these companies are having with the district? Is there any information at all about them that maybe are not coming back, that are not rebidding, and what the reason, if there is any reason at all, why they may not be doing that?
There are policy procedures on the facilities unit for that very thing. They're exit interviews per se. At the conclusion of a project, the facility team will often sit with the general contracting team, say what went well, what didn't. So we do have some of those. They're more qualitative than anything analytical that's capable, but it's all, word of mouth or annotative. Just, yeah, this person was a pain to work with, or this team was great. We hear both sides of it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other more questions for Mr.? Go ahead, Gina.
Hi, Gina Blackman Taylor again for the record. Thank you. This has actually been a really great presentation. I don't know why I used the qualifier actually, because I expected it to be a great presentation. But my questions, so what is the limit monetarily by which, like, you, I remember Justin telling me once, and I just don't have my notes about it, in terms of that minimum bid where, or the minimum amount that you can just contact a contractor for. I think it probably applied more to like those lower end projects. But do you remember is it like 25,000? Is it 100,000?
So there's kind of two prongs within the response to that. So there's any of our contractors we solicit work with, are we required to be pre-qualified with us? There are purchasing thresholds. I believe the regulation is 3310 or 3312, some of them in the 3 series. That does outline what needs to be procured and how per district policy, and then outside of even Nevada revised statutes on that. But we pre-qualify, for the lowest threshold is 25,000.
Okay.
And that's in alignment with the purchasing thresholds at that price point.
And then, given that we were just talking about inflation, and you brought up that, we're $30 million project, well, now we're seeing a $30 million project become a $60 million project.
Yep.
How are we evaluating the limits by which people are pre-qualified with regards to that?
That's a good question. Every time, so these contractors are pre-qualified every 2 years, or that's how long their pre-qualification is before it expires. And we are experiencing actually numerous general contractors. Yes, they're coming upon their bid limit with us, but it's because they didn't submit since 2 years before, or even a year and a half before. So they are capable to submit early, and they can, if they rationalize it to us that, hey, $1 isn't $1, it's really $5 now. We do take that into consideration as we pre-qualify, and we look at their current history of projects to say, yeah, they completed this type of a project 3 years ago, which is equal to about what this project limit is now. So we do take that into consideration.
Okay. And then, so with 56 companies pre-qualified and 18 have been awarded work, what kind of assumptions can we make about that gap? I mean, is it people who are not submitting bids once they're pre-qualified? Is there, what sort of information can you tell us just generally about that gap, if that's a normal gap?
Well, first and foremost, I want to make sure it's not necessarily a capture rate that maybe you would be intending. The 18 out of 56 it's not really a metric that'll track much, because within that 56, you do have many tier 1 major subcontractors that do end up on contracts with the 18 that did get the work. So the capture rate would be higher if we pulled the subcontractor data probably. But the ones that truly, they're just not bidding our work, or why isn't it attractive to the point of how did the last project go with us? There's a myriad of reasons why they're not bidding our work, or they're not winning work. Maybe they're not as competitively pricing things in a bid scenario. Without pontificating on what that thing is, there's numerous reasons for it. But we do try to solicit some of those feedbacks. If there's a major general contract that hasn't been bidding work with us, we often will notice that and reach out to them. Hey, we notice you haven't done work with us in a while. What's going on? How do we reinvigorate this? And we do usually get more participation after interactions like that.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the power of communication, right?
Yep.
And then to that end, in terms of these ones that are pre-qualified, are you legally able to provide a general contractor that, like, a list of those, or is that a habit of practice? Like, hey, here are the ones that are always qualified, or because you qualified that general contractor, they're pretty much able to use whatever subcontractor they want, because I'm assuming they don't need to have a separate pre-qualification with you to be used as a subcontractor with the general contractor, right? Is that a correct assumption?
Depends on delivery method and depends on, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of provisions within our NRS about how they are to be pre-qualified, even with their generals, even in a design bid build situation. But as long as they're meeting those requirements, yeah, we don't have a separate pre-qualification that the tier one subcontractor has to be pre-qualified with us. It's just really up to the general contractor more often than not.
I guess the reason why I'm asking is that when we were talking about some of this conversation a couple of years ago with Christy Eccles of the Diversity Council and the Nevada Contractors Association, one of the things that they do as a way of making sure that their subcontractors are ready, willing, and able, are they facilitate sort of a speed presentation to a Martin Harris, as an example, of exposing these subcontractors to these general contractors in a way, and that can get them work, right? And so then my question becomes, can CCSD essentially work as a facilitator in the same way of connecting general contractors with subcontractors that they may not be exposed to otherwise?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I think if there's means we're receiving more input than what the general contractors are receiving, yes, we want to connect as many of them as we can. But I think some of it will go back to maybe what the district takes as a diversity policy and procedure at large. So maybe be premature for any formalized things for me to preempt of maybe what the district's goals are in the diversity arena.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Ms. Williams? Go ahead.
This discussion around changing environments as it relates to bond limitations. What are the impacts? Are we seeing any impact as it relates to our contractors who maybe were awarded a contract and they had a certain bond limitation, and now, because the project now is double, and maybe they don't qualify any longer? Are we seeing any problems like that? And then my question is, do we double check to make sure that they still are bonded appropriately when they actually start the work? I mean, kind of, let's circle back and make sure now that we've got the right bond amount before we start construction.
Yeah, so they are our typical policy and procedure is, yes, they are pre-qualified under certain bond limits and bid limits, but every project they are required to validate their bond capacity as well as their payment and performance bonds. So there's a continual verification that they are still pre-qualified, still licensed, still insured, all those key metrics that
At the start of the work?
Yep.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that,
Yeah.
I'm sure you did, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
to know that.
Every project
And-
has the same, basically, pre-qualification.
And if there was any, going to your point of not wanting to bid or hasn't bid in a while, is that a reason? Because maybe they're not able to qualify for this higher bond?
I don't want to speculate, but it could be.
And Rodney Fouts for the record as well. When the bid award comes in, contract procurement is also analyzing whether they meet the qualifications. So for example, when we talked about the increase at Laughlin for the gym addition and the classroom addition for the elementary school, we had a bidder who did not qualify, didn't meet the bond requirement, so they were disqualified.
I think I was more, I know you're doing that part, but I was thinking in terms of now a year has gone by, we're delayed or whatever, and now we're starting the construction project, and maybe the price has gone up, and so now we need a higher bond limit. And are we going back then and saying, we need your new documentation to show that you still qualify at this, $60 million project as opposed to it was $30 million before?
Yeah, without the exact data pulled, I'd say none of our bidders are running that close to their bid limits.
Okay.
More often than not, the ones that are winning work are well beyond, or they're well under their limits. But I think there's one instance in particular I can think of where we actually deferred construction for a year as a result of a delay that was a swing school right before it. So in that instance, yes, we continued to verify that they were licensed, insured, bonded, and everything for the limits that that project still was a year later.
I guess they would probably, it's the contractors having more of a problem with their subs
Right.
than them, you know.
Yep.
They're probably more fiscally able to do that. So thank
Yeah.
you. I was just curious on how we handle that.
Mr. Camejo, go ahead.
When a contractor fails to qualify, do we send them like a letter saying these are the reasons why you didn't qualify? For example, let's say somebody applies for like a credit card and you get a letter back saying your credit score, because due to your credit score and your other inquiries, you didn't qualify for this credit card. Do we send like a letter saying, hey, this is what disqualified you? These are things you can work on for the next bid?
So we have very clearly spelled out in Regulation 7210 that if they either don't qualify at all or they don't qualify for the limits they desired for, they can make written requests to staff for reconsideration. Staff will reconsider. If they still do not agree with that, there are, again, provisions within 7210 that they can make appeal to the Board of School Trustees of whether they would like to hold a special meeting to hear why they would be qualified for more than what staff has determined as their limits.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do
Side
we-
note, Rodney Fouts for the record. Also, after the bids have come in, we send determination letters to each of the bidders, telling them that they either won the bid or they didn't win the bid. So at that point in time, they have the opportunity to challenge it as well.
Do we have any more questions for Mr. McLaughlin? Hearing none, do we have any public comment on the capital management program? Hearing none, I think we need a motion to adopt the presentation as noted. Looking for a motion.
Abraham, for the record, I motion to adopt this presentation.
Do we,
That's what it says according to this, according to the notes. So, we have a motion on the floor. I need a second.
Rob Gertison for the second.
We have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Hearing none? Motion carries. Now we are moving on to item 2.06, review of the Bond Oversight Committee bylaws and rules. Here, okay, as speaking as the chair, we're gonna open this up to any possibilities, any changes anybody would like to make. I'll open the floor to whoever wants to speak first. Go ahead, Ms. Gina Blackman.
Hi, this is Gina Blackman Taylor for the record. I want to just put into context some of the changes that the proposed changes you already see and what this conversation is. So this conversation was started by Patty Charlton when she was chair as part of the annual review. The fact that this now well over a year later is actually one of the things that is marked in the bylaws. But this is a conversation, so we are not going to be voting on any language today. There's not going to be an approval of any language today. The process that we had talked about was having some of these changes already laid out would provide a better basis of a conversation. And we also weren't going to try and attempt to rewrite this bylaws as a group of 7 or 8 people. If there are suggestions and things that need to be altered or changed, that we can take those suggestions, and then we would be presenting a copy that in January to be approved for recommendation to the Board of Trustees. So we also don't approve the bylaws and make them stick. We have to make a recommendation for the Board of Trustees to approve our bylaws. So that's kind of the background of that process, and I'm hoping that if anyone has any questions or doesn't understand that process, but this is, anything that you see here, we're just the basis of a conversation as proposals based on conversations that have been happening with Patty. It doesn't necessarily capture everything. So if there are things that you see that it does not capture, also this is the opportunity to speak up.
Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
I just wanted to add as well, because we do have many new members and members that weren't serving when these bylaws and rules conversations started, probably 2 years ago, I would say. And so, so a lot of, going to my colleague's point, or these are things that, ideas that we've been kind of floating around and talking about. But I know there were some other things that I didn't see on here that I know that we had kind of, some of the conversations with previous members, and I don't recall everything. I know kind of, you know, what was important to me personally to see in our bylaws recommendations, and so I just wanted to put that out there so that you know, it was this was just kind of like you know, everyone contributing to conversation, and so I'm hoping that this can be a very robust conversation, because it's been a while since we had a revision to bylaws and rules, and so you know, I think this is the time to have conversations, whether it's appropriate to add or change or modify anything else, and also while we have legal counsel here as well to help guide us. But one of the other things that for me is, how do we address, and I don't know that bylaws and rules is the right place, but for us, because this is how we operate, not necessarily how staff operates, right? And we're not mandated to require, or we can only ask, right? And so, but one of the things that I see in operating as a member of the Bond Oversight Committee is sometimes and this is no reflection on staff, so please don't take it as that. You guys are wonderful. But sometimes it takes a while for us to get presentations or to get reports back or information back that we ask for, and sometimes it's a lengthy process. And so I don't know is there a way we can address that in our bylaws and rules? I don't know, but that's one of the things that I find sometimes a challenge in getting information back, just so that we can then are better informed to make recommendations to the trustees about things concerning our bond, which is important to all of us. And so I'm hoping that this will be an opportunity where we can kind of talk about some of the challenges we may have as a committee to function at a higher level and be able to provide a better service to our trustees, which we're appointed, you know, we are a trustee committee. So so I'm hoping we really take this opportunity, because I don't know when it's going to come again. I think it's been 10 years since we revised bylaws and rules, so 20 years? Oh,
10.
10? Okay. So I hope that we take this opportunity, because I don't know when it may come again. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Go ahead, Mr.
Going with what my colleague was saying, depending on the presentation, maybe establish a timeline, so that way we're not waiting 6 months or a year for a presentation. But also depending on the report, so, because it could be an annual report, it could be you know, just depending on what's being asked. So maybe we can have a discussion on establishing different timelines for certain types of presentations. Staff, you guys know your schedule and how long it takes to do certain things. So, you know, as long as we're all working together, you know, that's the goal, right?
I guess if there is a possibility for the E-Board to meet with staff, if there's a way to streamline this process that these people are trying to ask, you know, streamline the process for these presentations and so forth, there's something we can do to change, something we can add. We're open to discussion with you guys, if that's what it takes.
Yeah, as it relates to the bylaws themselves, I don't know what the recommendation is of you guys in it. I mean, yes, I hear you loud and clear. We can work together on it, but I don't know what that means, specific language in your bylaws as it relates to it, so.
Because of the limitation.
Yeah, I feel like this might be, maybe that is more part of a policy, or that where we have this kind of standing committee report, rather than something that is about how this board operates, which is, I think, what these changes were meant to reflect. I mean, we can, some of these you can tell are simply language changes called, it's not called bond construction program, so, changing it to capital improvement plan. Some of the ones in terms of the executive committee, going to a 2-year instead of a 1-year term, simply because with with meetings that are typically not scheduled, basically 1 year goes by quite quickly. And then changing that to 2 terms, so basically it would be 4 years as on the executive committee versus 3 as a limit. Conducting a biennial review of the bylaws versus an annual, same issue. We come upon, these years are going by quite quickly, and so by the time we kind of get through the process, it's time to do it again, basically. The one section in policies and practices was trying to clarify that language about being able to invite third parties to present information at bond oversight meetings. And that essentially the approval of the Board of Trustees would become necessary for something that was an employed individual, trying to clarify that language. And then obviously that some of the language in community relations representatives has been to soften it, essentially like taking out that word coordinating that communications. That is beyond the responsibility of a voluntary bond oversight committee liaison, and making it a participate in. So trying to make this language reflect reality. And then the final thing was a piece that had been talked about in previous meetings, where we talked about the addition of another liaison as the disparity study and its ramifications make their way through CCSD at large and facilities and construction in our immediate sphere, that having a liaison that could be that main person that reports on the efforts to increase diversity and equity and inclusion within those policies and procurement, that was the reason for that. So that's kind of the background for the changes that you see in the bylaws. And so if there can be conversation about whether or not those changes are generally accepted, or if not, what's the alternative? And then if there are places where their language wasn't changed, but there feels like there's a need to be a change, this is a great time to bring that up.
So are you looking for a motion basically to accept the changes as highlighted?
This is
in
a discussion,
This
not
is-
an action item, so
Right.
this is actually just
Or
to
more
get
dis-
that input on the language and changes that have been proposed, whether or not there is a desire to change some of that. If not, then in January, we will bring a fuller, more official, that would be the action item in January.
Gotcha. Is there any more discussion on anything that's been highlighted within these bylaws? Any of the other, go ahead, Ms. Williams.
I just didn't want to jump out if someone else had something to contribute, so. I would like to have a little more conversation around Section 8 and the proposal to change it from 1 year to 2 years and 3 years to 2 years consecutive terms. We're talking about executive committee terms. I understand, and I heard you when you said 1 year goes by very fast, but I've also served on many boards where members of the executive board may not be as effective as I would like to see, and it does give an opportunity for members to make a change. And if we have to wait 2 years, that can be very lengthy. So I don't know that I'm in support of that change, other than the way we have it, because if we like who's serving and they're effective, then it's been the practice of this committee to just reelect them and continue to serve. But I like having that kind of an out option in place, instead of having to suffer through, because that could turn into 4 long consecutive years. So that's my comment as it relates to that. I hope other people will chime in and share your opinions, and because I would love to hear that, and you know, and, because I'm always ready to change my opinion about things, you know, based on more information. So how do the rest of the members kind of feel about that? And this is a time for us to discuss, because when we come back, we won't be really discussing, we'll be voting.
Is there any other follow-up behind Ms. Williams' comment?
Aaron, for the
Go
record,
ahead.
can there be like an evaluation period within the 2 years to say, hey, you know, let's evaluate each other and see if the team's not working right, then it can be noted?
I think that's how we vote.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
I
but-
kinda your vote is saying, yeah, you're doing a good job, and a no vote is.
But before, you know, something in between the 2 years, like you're mentioning, I don't know. It's discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my opinion, if it's that much of an issue, it is not such a priority. It was more for like, kind of seeing how we've gotten behind on some of those things, but, I mean, I feel like Al, I won't speak for Al, I don't know where he is on that, but I don't know, that was a part of those conversations that were happening even a year ago, so I don't know that there's anybody that's a big champion for making this change, so if there's, I wouldn't want to make the change and then add another step, I would rather just not make the change.
I mean, it's been our practice that we, you know, I mean, look, Gina and Al, Al was second, well, first vice chair, Gina was second vice chair, however we do it, first, second, whatever. Anyway, they've moved up, just kind of moved up, and it was a recommendation that we, if they still wanted to serve, you know what I mean? But I've just seen some things go wrong on boards and committees in leadership where things aren't getting done. And I just would hate to put us in a position where that happens, because I know that since I've been on the board, I've seen a real desire to really move things forward with the Bond Oversight Committee, and I pleasantly like that. You know, that, not that I've done it, I'm just saying that being more involved, I've noticed it. And so there have been times as an advocate in the community where I've watched the Bond Oversight Committee, and really it was just kind of a formality every month, kind of get together and, you know, not really move an agenda. And so I know everybody's time's precious, mine certainly is, and I just want to make sure that I continue to serve on a board that we currently have, a committee that we currently have, where people are really here to really move things forward. And so that's the reason why I feel like maybe keeping it the way that we have it allows us the best opportunity to make sure that we continue to move forward and be most effective for the community.
Yeah, if I can say, I think Section 7 does cover that a little bit, where, you know, because we, you know, if the member in question is, you know, acting inappropriately or in any way, you know, it goes back to the trustees that appointed us to make a recommendation to remove us as well. So I think,
But that's for misconduct and inappropriate behavior, and that's not what I'm really referring to.
no, I know, but
Yeah.
I think in case of what you're referring to, I think that might be covered in that section right there.
No, it doesn't. I'm not even referring to inappropriate behavior, because I've never seen that with anybody serving in the 15 years that I've been watching this committee. And so that's not, I'm not referring to misconduct or inappropriate behavior. I'm talking about effectiveness and being able to move an agenda and work effectively with the team and the board members, and be able to move an agenda forward. And that's all. And that would not be covered under Section 7, because that would not be inappropriate behavior or misconduct.
Correct.
It's just ineffectiveness. So.
Okay, do we have any other comments on this particular topic? The next topic that was highlighted here, I'm looking under Section 9, to have biannual reviews of bond oversight bylaws instead of annual. Any discussion on this matter? Was there a reason you put twice a year? Wanna
No,
say
every
anything?
other year.
Every other year.
So, but it sounds to me that, it sounds to me that we can just easily make that change regarding the executive committee, but unless there's another argument against it, a review every other year of the bylaws seems,
I don't see any problem in that, to be honest with you. Does anybody else have an opinion on this particular matter? Okay. All right, and then, I guess moving on to section 4, the Bond Oversight Committee within a majority vote may invite third parties to present information relevant to its tasks. I guess we did speak to this a little bit earlier, trying to get a more streamlined, process. So, any discussion on this particular item? Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering, is this clear enough? The language clear enough what we're asking for? I know it says invite third parties to present. Do we have to be clarified and say that may be outside of CCSD employment? Because I know that's been the issue.
Third
do we need
party is
to be
usually third
specific?
party, I mean,
But I don't want to be, have,
Vague or-
again, what is the interpretation? And dealing with public policy, I know sometimes we just have to be very, very clear and concise as to what we're asking, because everyone's, interpretation, including a judge, can be different.
for me, in the past, third parties implemented for a purpose, to have non-biased opinions on for whatever. So for me, it's pretty clear, unless somebody else has an opinion on this.
Maybe we can ask our legal advice, what their thoughts are on using, do we need more clarity, or does third party mean that outside of CCSD staff?
So just to be clear, the intent is for non-CCSD staff to present to the board
To be able to have the ability
upon
to,
request.
yeah, upon request.
I think the language is sufficient to encompass that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, design liaison representatives, they do have qualifications to promote expansion of pole and architectural firms. Is that something you want to elaborate on?
that's just a typo.
That's just-
It's just a
just
typo
typos?
to add a plural. An S.
Okay. Again, I think the last big one here is adding the extra liaison, to deal with equity, diversity, and inclusion. Any opinion want to be spoken on this matter other than what's already been spoken up to this point? Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
I just wanted to clarify for the public, for those who may be viewing, that the reason that this has been a discussion for a while now, probably closer to about 2 years. I think that's when we made the recommendation to do the disparity study that the Board of Trustees received earlier this year. What was it? Time goes by. And so that was one of the reasons why we thought it may be great to have a representative based on the decisions and the goals and policies that the trustees will be making as it relates to that report and those findings, and they are working on what those policies will be. So we're implementing new policies, and so we thought that it would be good to have someone who is kind of working with staff to make sure that the trustees' goals in this committee is being served. And that kind of is I just wanted to offer the background for those who maybe weren't here for those kinds of discussions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Williams. Do we have any other discussions on any other changes within these bylaws? Hearing none, do we have any public comment on this discussion of committees and bylaws? Hearing none, moving forward with 2.07, questions and/or removal of items on motions, taskings, and liaison taskings. So here we have on the motions and taskings, analysis of district cost savings and options to provide access to a larger population of students. Ms. Williams, is there anything you want to elaborate on this particular item since you're on this?
I have a call in to Dr. Barton to see if, we don't have a December meeting though, do we?
don't think we do.
I think we pass on
We
December,
usually go
don't we?
dark on
Val?
December, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will ask him about January, if he's prepared. I know they have had a lot going on this year, and a lot of changes and structural changes and all of that, and it's short of staff. And so I've tried to give grace, a lot of grace. But I'm waiting for him to give me a call back or text me when we can get together, and then I can see. I know that it's a work in progress. I know that there's been progress made because he has given me updates on that. I just don't know if he's ready to give that presentation to you all. And so let me just follow up with him on that, and hopefully January or February, he's prepared to do that. Is that okay?
Great, thank you.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Ms. Williams on this particular topic? Hearing none, is there any public comment on this particular topic of removal of motions, liaisons, and taskings? Hearing none. Let's move on to item 2.08, future agenda planning. Mr. Cameo, you had something you wanted to bring up in this?
Yeah,
issue?
I was wondering if we can maybe have a sit-down for how the E-building, the program's working, or maybe it could be where we can go down to the facilities office and just take a look. So that way we understand better, the process of the construction and how everything is moving on your guys' end as well.
So is this more a liaison tasking or a future agenda presentation?
I personally would like to see how the program's working, and if any of my colleagues would like to, maybe we can, if not, if they don't want to, then maybe just you and me can do it as one of our meetings.
Do any other members have any interest in this particular item? Because myself and Mr. Camejo, since we're both in charge of construction, we can meet with you during our monthly meeting
Okay, I mean,
and
this-
discuss the building process.
I recommend, my preference would be to have you guys as the experts, talk directly with staff. That way staff doesn't have to do more work to present to people that maybe don't have the expertise.
I'm good with that. You good with that, Mr. McLaughlin?
yeah, I think this, then probably more so if you guys just want to cover it in your liaison meets or liaison taskings, it's probably a more appropriate place for it than
Sounds-
agenda planning.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Any other future agenda planning items that we'd like to add on to future agendas? Yeah, Ms. Williams, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And I don't know if this has to be an agenda item or not. I have some concerns as it relates to safety, safety in our schools, and I know we've done a lot of work. We haven't had an update in a while, though, on school safety, some of the things, we had a lot of things going on and creating a more safe environment. I've been on many campuses, and I can see that implemented. I mean, it's pretty secure and for most of our schools, or at least the ones that I've been visiting. But I would like to see some follow-up on that, just kind of a check-in, kind of a, let's get the temperature, where are we at, or the pulse, that's the word, the pulse of kind of where we are on that. I know we had some things that were kind of outstanding. One of the things that I know I brought up maybe a good 6-7 months ago was around the gymnasiums, the bleachers in many of our schools, and I know you provided me with a list, but my trustee has asked about that. And so we did have quite a number of schools in District F that had bleacher problems, and seeing the number of fighting and the violence that's going on recently, you've watched the news. That's the reason that we have a school policy that says visiting teams and have to be on the other side and home team on the other side to kind of make sure we're not in the bleachers together, and then tensions rise. And so I just wanted to, and so that was just an example of what I'm talking about. Can we get maybe an update on where we are as it relates to the, make just a presentation on where we are, where you're at, what's next that you're looking to do. Just kind of give us an update on where we are to make sure that we are moving progressively and continue to enhance our school securities.
I'd like a little bit of clarity around that. The the safety and security projects that are probably most visible are not funded by a capital improvement process. They're through other funding means in the general budget. So I'd be hesitant, I just want clarity around, is it an update of current implementations of increasing security on our campuses, or is it designed features within capitally improved projects? I think there's two different subjects within there.
Yes, so we have used bond oversight committee, bond oversight money, is my understanding, on some of these security enhancements we've done, especially around technology.
Technology is primarily used for the items that are going in the classroom, not necessarily for cameras and so forth. So
So
when you're
we're
looking
not-
at the technology budget, it was what's going into the school as far as computers and those types of things, or outside. For example, our e-builder system is coded to capital funds project because we use that to track our project.
So we're not using, like, for example, the security camera system, that's, we didn't use
Only when it's
bond
incorporated into the project that's being built.
in the
So a
in the
new
projects
school
being
would
built.
have
Okay.
cameras included within that. For example, all of our security upgrades, where we're talking about single point of entry, camera upgrades, those types of things are coming out of the statutory reserve fund.
Okay. So we're not using bond dollars for school security at all?
Not of the current events that you'd be referencing,
Okay.
but that's where I'm saying, is it more appropriate, and are you seeking a presentation more on what are the security features of the things that are on the capital improvement list of projects? Or is it an update of just where are we at in developing greater security at our current campuses?
Well, that's what I was looking for, and it was my understanding that we were using bond monies to do that, to enhance security on our campuses. There was a presentation made, and I can't look at the date, maybe we can go back and ask our secretary when that presentation was made. I want to say it was well over maybe close to 2 years. I know it was after COVID, and it was a pretty thorough presentation on what we were doing without providing procedure or anything that, we didn't want, to make sure we continue to keep our schools safe. But, and it was my understanding that that was bond money, so I don't know. Maybe bond money was used for that, and then now it's gone, and we're not doing anything further as it relates to that. I don't know. But maybe you can look into that and then provide whatever status we have, and if there is any bond money being used on any of the projects, then maybe you can address that.
Yeah, we can look through what the prior presentation was, but to my
Okay.
knowledge, we're not funding any security improvements with
Okay.
bond dollars currently. So we'll look into it.
Perhaps then, I know it won't address the issue of like benches, for instance, in the cafeteria as an example, but, maybe then this becomes a Rob liaison thing of having a conversation about what sort of improvements in security we're seeing in new construction and how those are being incorporated in future builds is perhaps maybe the way that we can get at some information about advancements in safety and security on our campuses, but within the context of bond oversight funds. Perhaps that's the way to go.
Yeah, and maybe it's not, and maybe this is a question I need to direct to someone else then as it relates to that, because I'm particularly interested in where we are on our existing campuses. And so if we're not using bond money for that, then I would need to go outside this committee to get those answers or seek those answers, so. But if there is anything in your research, please let us know.
Certainly as a liaison update, we'd be able to share quite a bit more as it relates to our security improvements, but again, they're not funded by bonds, so yeah, it would be probably improper for the committee to solicit that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Mr.
And
Pearson.
I do appreciate that question, because any questions that the board has, that not myself, but just anybody else that might have expertise in, I'll, like say for design example, I'll certainly collect those from our committee and then meet with staff. That way it takes a lot of the unneeded, work that staff has to do to answer back on all the questions. So for example, for the e-builder, I do have a lot of questions, but I'm going to go to you guys to field those questions, and then maybe you can bring us back answers. So maybe that's something that is in our policies. Now, we passed the policy portion of the agenda, but I think that's something that we could talk about later about, utilizing the liaisons to reduce staff time, because I know you guys are really busy.
Okay, do we have any other discussion on any possible future agenda items? Hearing none. Do we have any public comment on this issue of future agenda items? I guess pertaining to what we discussed, nothing really got added to it, so there's no need for a motion for nothing that really came through, because that's what it's showing here on my paperwork, so no motion needed this time. So I will move forward on to public comment, 3.01. Do we have any public comment available out there? There's none. Thank you, Valerie. All right, is any other things we need to bring up for the board? I did, excuse my rudeness, but I failed to introduce Mr. Todd Peterson. If you'd like to say a few words, I know nobody else knows you on the board, and just say a few words about yourself and get to know you.
I'll just, thank you very much. So my name is Todd Peterson. I'm the principal at Manion Middle School in Henderson. This is a really interesting opportunity, and I appreciate everyone and welcoming me and any perspective that I can ever provide from the school level on behalf of the principals and the teachers. I'd be more than happy to do that in any way that I can. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome to the board, Mr. Peterson. I think that's a great
Got me out of
perspective.
lunch duty, so thank you.
Yay.
Are there any other comments or issues we need to bring from the board? Go ahead, Mr. Camilo.
Hey, Ron, for the record, I just want to wish everybody a good Thanksgiving as it's coming up. Hopefully, you guys can we can all enjoy a little break and have lots of turkey and spend time with our family. So that way we can come back energized and continue to do more good for our community.
Thank you, Mr. Camilo. I too want to iterate, just everybody have a safe holidays and be safe out there and enjoy the holidays with your family and so forth. With that, we have one more motion left on the table, motion to adjourn.
This is Gina Blackman-Taylor with a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion on the floor. Looking for a second.
Abraham, for the record, I second that motion.
Mr. Camilo has a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, guys.